Greetings everyone. Welcome to today's lecture on Gandhara and Mathura art. In this lecture, I shall be talking about the early Buddhist and Hindu icons that developed between 2nd to 6th CE. Stone Buddha images that were made during the Kushana period seem to have been part of walls surrounding and adorning stupas, much like the attendants and nature spirits that were seen at Sanchi, or rock-cut gathering halls that were used primarily by monks. Sometimes around the period of Gupta dynasty, that is between 4th to mid-6th CE, however, the images themselves became the focus of worship, just as abstract symbols had been in earlier periods. Now, this was a gradual change that was coming about in religion as well as different forms of worship that were evolving from time to time. A much smaller number of stone icons appeared towards the end of this period, though again it is unclear when such images became the focus of worship, as the fire offering had been the most important form of worship since early Vedic times. It may also be images made of wood or clay which have probably not survived, which could have preceded these stone images. The sandstone image is the earliest dated Buddhist icon made of stone, which its inscription claims to be was made during the 3rd year of Kanishka's reign, that was around 131 CE. The inscription calls it a bodhisattva, which may reflect the importance in this region on Buddhas as well as several other forms of Buddha. Like all other Mathura sculptures, this figure was made of locally available red sandstone. Its color would not have mattered since the figure would have been originally painted, and some kind of cloth also sticks to the body as if it were wet. Now, this is the image that I am talking about, and there is a lot of speculation whether this can be considered as the first image. As you can see, the cloth on the body clearly depicts as if it was a wet cloth clinging to the body. The broad shoulders and well-rounded faces of these images was the characteristic of Mathura sculpture, as was the halo behind the head, which is only partially preserved in this particular statue. The three-fold knotted hair at the top of the head became more and more important in later Buddhist iconography, and this also kind of depicted a three-fold umbrella which caps major stupas. The elongated ears are a standard physical feature of Buddha iconography as one of the numerous traits that also indicate his divine power. Then you can see these Buddha icons at Mathura. The faces are well rounded and the body is muscular. The seated image could have been designed for worship following the patterns that had been depicted in several carvings at Sanchi. The seated Buddha was flanked by 2 royal attendants, and above there were 2 winged celestial beings. Below the figure, there was an attempt to make the Buddha look as large as a stupa in comparison, and this was probably a way of showing the power and influence and importance of Buddha. The positions of right hand were indicate some kind of a reassurance for the worshipper, and also the fact that the worshipper should have no fear. This type of image became extremely popular and was imitated throughout Buddhist Asia. As you can see in this image that is being shown to you, all the features are clearly visible. Now around 4th century there was emergence of what has been called the classical phase of Indian art. Sculpture of this period provided evidence of a shift away from the mundane kind of a depiction, and it reflected a movement towards the inner realm of the spirit. So there was an attempt to display the contemplative aspect with which Indian art is mostly associated. So the transformation was not confined to representation of Buddha divinities only, because other religions exhibited the same serenity and introspection as they developed iconographies of their own. So the same kind of introspection became visible in Jain iconography or Hindu iconography as well. So Gangetic Valley was a resurgent center of artistic activity. Due to its relatively protected situation, the state of Madhya Pradesh preserves many remains from 4th to 6th century in a variety of accomplished regional styles, as revealed in several images of different type, and one example that can be given here is that of Varha from Iran in the region of Sanchi. The early sculpture emphasized massive volume and form, as you can see in the statue of Varha with an inscription of Torman, which has been found from Iran in Madhya Pradesh, dated 5th century. You can clearly see the volume of this image, the huge extent and the spread. So coming to our description of Mathura School of Art, it reflects the urban and the sophisticated tastes of the inhabitants, the patrons and sculptors of the region who had adopted the older forms of Bharhut Sanchi, and they had also kind of ingrained some foreign artistic influences of Bactro Gandharan art to create a widespread and very influential art style. So Mathura and the surrounding regions have had a long history, though continuous political history can be traced from 6th century BCE onwards, when it became the capital of Surasen Janapada. Later on, this region came under the control of Magadhan kingdom under the Nandas and Mauryas, from whom it passed on to the Sungas, under whom it was a prosperous city, as has also been recorded by Patanjali in 2nd century BCE. It continued to be under the control of local chiefdoms such as the Mitras and Dattas, whose coins also have been discovered from this region. And it is around the middle of the 1st century BC that Mathura came under the rule of Saka Kshatrapas, whose rulers such as Rajula and his son Sodasha issued the inscriptions of importance. However, it is under the Kushanas, especially under Kanishka, that Mathura became the eastern capital and emerged as a major center of art activity. The Kushanas ruled this region till around 250, after which there was a hiatus or a gap here till the rise of the Guptas in the 4th century, though art activity continued even in the transitional period. So during this entire period, there was an expanding urbanization, there was rise of long distance trade, and increasing contact within larger areas of the Kushana Empire, and emergence of some kind of urbanized sensibilities, tastes and desires of the city dwellers, and all this is clearly visible in the kind of sculptures that were developing under the ages of Mathura art. So by 2nd century BC, Mathura was both an important urban center as well as a center for various faiths such as Buddhism, Jainism, Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and even many Naga cults. So the Bhagavad cult of Vishnu spread here around 1st to 2nd century during Kushana period, and in the early period large Yaksha and Yakshi images had been carved. During the Shunga period, worship of gods through symbols such as the Bodhi tree, chakra, etc. had continued. Later, Jaina and Buddhist stupas were also built at Mathura along with the rest of central India. Now, if we talk about specifically art of Mathura, it is characterized by the use of mottled red Sikri sandstone that was found in this area and around this area. Majority of sculptures have been recovered from sites in and around the city from various Buddhist, Jain and other sectarian buildings. The important Buddhist sites include Katra, Keshadeva, then Jamaipur, Chaubara, Bhuteshwara, Patikhera, Maholi, Govindgarh, etc. And the most important Jaina site was at Kanakali Tila. Sonk has revealed the existence of several structural temples belonging to Naga cult along with some antiquities. So one can say that influence of Mathura art was widespread over North India, with specimens being discovered not only from Mathura but also Sarnath, Kausambi, Bodh Gaya, Rajgir in UP and Bihar, along with Sanchi in Madhya Pradesh and Chandraketugarh in Bengal, then Vednagar in Gujarat and as far as Taxila in Pakistan. So from Ahitchhatra and Sanghol in UP and Punjab, a considerable quantity and variety of sculptures in Mathura style have been discovered, which provide ample evidence of the export and popularity of this art form beyond the city itself. So therefore, use of the term Mathura art must not confuse us with the idea that it was only an art form that was specifically located in and around Mathura region. It was more of a style of art that was influencing several artistic activities that were taking place across time and space. The sculptures from the Mathura school have remarkable stylistic unity. The figures have oval or rounded faces with open eyes, thick lips and sharp nose, with a fleshy body, a full bodied figure which is shown in a number of postures, and this kind of also distinguishes it from Gandhara art, where one does not kind of come across such features. Most of the female figures were delineated in a voluptuous manner with heavy round breasts, narrow waist and broad hips. The male figures were shown with slight V-shaped torsos. The figures were generally shown wearing almost transparent clinging dhoti, while a scarf like uttariya emerged from behind one shoulder over one forearm. So here you see that there was no use of Roman toga in showing the drapery. The divine figures are shown with one hand upraised in Abhay Mudra and the other was placed on the waist near the knot of waistband with a canopy like halo atop and behind the head. Then several plants, leaves, birds and animals were rendered in a very realistic manner, and also there was a lot of emphasis on details of these on background as well as the reverse of many sculptures at Mathura. The figure of Buddha usually wore a samghati that covers only one shoulder. The hair were arranged in small snail-like curls or were gathered in a kapardin-like top knot. A large halo with scalloped edges represented a flame or light which could be seen behind the head. Often, attendant deities such as the Bodhisattvas or Indra and Brahma were also shown on both sides of the Buddha. The discovery of a number of donative inscriptions from the pedestals of Buddha and Bodhisattva images from Mathura and surrounding areas has kind of indicated the evolution of Buddha image as well as the Buddhist principles and tenets which became very popular during this period. And one of the best preserved specimens is from Ahitchatra, whose inscription reveals that it was a gift of the Bhikshu Viran for the benefit and happiness of all teachers together with elderly Shramanas and disciples. Now this inscription is dated in the year 32, probably of the Kanishka era, that is 152 CE. In another example, the sculpture of seated meditating Buddha that has been found from Katra indicates that it was dedicated by a Buddhist nun named Amoha Asi for the welfare and happiness of all sentient beings. So such inclusive generosity is indicative of Mahayana Buddhism, which emphasizes the belief that merit or punya can be transferred from one to another. And so we see influence of Mahayana Buddhism not only on Gandhara art but also on Mathura art. The large number of sculptures of Bodhisattvas is another indication of the popularity of Mahayana Buddhism in this region. These were usually shown as standing royal personages, lavishly bejeweled and wearing a crown. Then the attributes in their hands, such as a purse or a lotus, identifies them as a particular bodhisattva, such as a Maitreya bodhisattva or an Avalokiteshvara. Now this early development of the identification of particular deities based on their posture, vehicle and form can be described as specific iconographic traits. These iconographic traits are characteristic of Mathura school of art, and they also reflect the contemporary religious environment, especially from post-Mauryan era onwards, as there was evolution of bhakti as well as sectarian principles. So Shaiva figures were found from the region, though their numbers are very limited. Ekamukhalinga and Chaturmukhalinga linga icons with one or four faces of Shiva carved on four sides began to be made during this period, though the classic examples would come much later from Gupta period. Then Kartikeya, Skand, was one of the more prolific deities, with independent as well as composite images being made of them. Of the latter, he is shown with Shashti as well as with Ekan Mamsa, and the Panchatantra cult of Vishnu also seems to have taken root here, with a number of images being created. For example, Chaturvyuha Vishnu, which shows Vasudev as the central figure, and also several surrounding images around him. As you can see in this visual, this is the visual of Skand belonging to Mathura art. Icons of Vishnu holding a mace and disc were also found from the region, along with Krishna and Balram. Haldhar, both of whom evolved from independent pastoral and agricultural deities into becoming the incarnation or avatars of Vishnu. Now this was a very important development which later on came to be reflected in many more sculptural idioms. Then Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, came to be associated with Kuber Panchika, the lord of wealth and prosperity. They are seen not only in the Brahmanical context but also in the Buddhist and local cults, because their association with material well-being and growth was rooted in the common cultural environment of this entire region. Kuber was also shown in conjunction with Hariti, a Yakshi goddess who is associated with children and their well-being. Then small votive plaques of these two are found in a large number from Mathura. Other deities such as Matrikas or the mothers, then Naigamesha and Skanda, associated with children and having protective or destructive powers, were created and donated in large numbers during the post-Mauryan period at Mathura. Now this panel shows Sapta Matrikas, that is the panel showing 7 mothers and who were supposed to have special powers. Then one can also talk about Ayagapatas. The Jains of Mathura produced votive tablets called Ayagapatas that contain auspicious marks of worship. For example, the fish couple or Matsya Yugal, then the swastik, Ratna Bhanda, and then also Purna Kumbha, Indrayasti and Matsya. All these were auspicious symbols that were made on these tablets and were probably worshipped. This is an example of a Jain Ayagapata dated 25 to 50 CE, and if one looks closely, there are several sacred symbols in this panel, in this tablet. Now another feature associated with Mathura school of art was abundance of female figures, something which was not there in Gandhara art. There were several female figures in different poses that were carved on railing pillars and torana, and they were engaged in several activities like bathing under a waterfall or playing with swords or a ball and with a child, or carrying an offering, a basket, holding a lamp, or tying a waistband, or drinking from a cup. They are often shown standing on a dwarf yaksha or on a lotus or an incline, and are clearly voluptuous, and their sensuality is clearly highlighted. So these figures wear very transparent dhoti revealing the form beneath, a heavy waistband or mekhala, and other jewelry like bangles, anklets, bracelets, etc. were usually seen. These females derive from the Yakshi figures found in the early stupas. Also one can trace them to Shala Bhanjikas, and they were probably conferred an element of fertility. It was believed that their existence would add an element of fertility on the stupa and the devotee who visited these stupas. So often the scenes from Jataka stories were also carved on the other side of the pillars, such as Bhuteshwara, and also lotus was a very popular theme that was carved. Two-sided panels with an offering bowl on top are another distinguishing specimen of sculptural art from Mathura, whose precise function and meanings are still not clear. Perhaps there was some kind of an offering or water for ritual ablution were placed in these bowls. These may have a tree carved on one side and a figural panel on the other side, or a narrative passage on both sides. For example, the Vasant Sena panel from Maholi, which is a very good example of such panels. This depicted moments from the play Mrichakattika and Also, there was depiction of Kuber and attendants drinking wine from Palikhera. Many scenes from royal life, such as drinking and adorning the self and patrons in the area, along with scenes of couples playing with each other, were depicted on the toran and railings of structures. So, having discussed all these important features, we can now clearly visualize the kind of diversity that exists and how different art forms evolved over a period of time. Thank you.